So I just got out of my appointment with Laura, and we covered a lot because one thing she tries to remind me of is that deep down my dad is a scared little boy because he never really grew up emotionally. And the reason that he could scare me so much when I was younger and even now as an adult is because he's bigger than me, and that even though he's disabled and bedbound right now, you know, he still scares me because of all the trauma he's caused me since childhood, and that is not my fault, and it's not something I should be ashamed of because it's not something I did to myself. The emotional abuse, I didn't do it to myself. But, a lot of us trauma survivors, we have to really deal with shame, and we have to fight the shame inside of us because it just. Oh, yeah, my shirt says survive and fight. It's Godzilla -1. Um, but. Got my necklace is all tangled up. But when I get flashbacks or when I get triggered, I experience a lot of shame. And I admitted that to Laura. And she was so glad that I did because she's like, you didn't hurt yourself. Your dad just never grew up. And now your mom is kind of becoming toxic because of all this trauma that she's gone through and is going through. And it's taken you back to your childhood where you were shamed for having feelings. And so, yeah. And all this blustering that's going on around me, it's a bunch of scared people being scared. But I get tired of feeling like the emotional toilet. And you should never have to be that for anybody when you don't want to. If you offer to hear somebody out when they're having a struggle and they bluster at you and explode and have their feelings or whatever, you're kind of being a willing receptacle. You're not being a toilet that waste is being dumped into. You are being more like a jar. You are accepting what they are placing. What they are putting out, you are accepting it into a jar, and you're going to, help them work through it. Or at least let them feel not alone. You can show them your jar of your nonsense brain stuff, and it's just it's a way to say I love you and you're not alone and I'm here for you. But shame is hard because it gets so ingrained. And there is a difference between guilt and shame because I don't feel guilty for being triggered. I feel ashamed. Guilt is you did something bad. Shame is you are something bad. So there is a difference. One is external, the other is internal. Shame is internal, guilt is external. And Laura kind of helped relieve me of my shame in the sense of I shouldn't have to feel ashamed of this. And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know what's going to come next, just so long as we stick to our coping mechanisms and stick to being kind to ourselves. Which, when you're a trauma survivor, that's hard. Being kind to yourself is hard because you've been taught for so long to treat yourself like you're nothing. But you are not nothing. You are somebody and you are special and you have as much right to be around and take up space as anybody else. You have the right to feel. And that takes me to another thing because I have Elizabeth here. I have some of her ashes in my necklace here. This is a little urn necklace. And since getting this, I've noticed a change in how I talk to myself out loud. Because there are times where I tell myself I'm stupid or, I would say, like, you are something. Like, I was standing across the room looking at myself and I would insult that other me. that comes from within me, that imagined me externalized. And now I try not to say those things because I don't want Elizabeth to think I'm saying it to her. Because I wouldn't talk to Elizabeth the way I talk to myself. And Laura really lit up when I mentioned that. She's like, imagine her voice is louder. What would she be saying to you right now? And she would be saying, it'll be okay, honey, I love you. That's what Elizabeth would always say, is it'll be okay, honey, I love you. I'm getting emotional because I miss her. But I just try to imagine her saying that in those moments where I feel really abandoned and alone. Because she might have gone on to another form of existence, but there's a part of her that's still here with me. You know, she's in here, her what was mortal of her. Some of that is here, but I've got all these memories of her and things she said and things she did, and the memory of her smile and her laugh and ridiculous things we did. And it's like, those are what I try to go to when I want to attack myself. It's like, I'm going to go see my friend instead. But it is hard. And the thing with trauma is that you might think you're the only one in the room going through it, but the person across the room could be going through it. The person sitting behind you could be going through it. The person in the car next to you at the red light could be going through it. You know, there's a word for it, Sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R. The realization that everybody around you has their own complicated life and story. And that includes trauma. Because when you're a survivor, you think about all these things that you have to do just to get through a day, and someone else might be doing it too, and you just don't know. But someone who doesn't have trauma, they do not understand. And like, you know, I'm not saying everybody and nobody has trauma. I mean, some people have trauma they won't acknowledge, and they make it everyone else's problem. And those are the trauma people that kind of are detrimental to those of us that are trying to do better and improve. But it's not their fault because they didn't cause their trauma. But in not dealing with it, they make it harder for themselves and for people around them. And it's not their fault. It's just their brain has not made that choice that they have to move on and get help. And some of that is because they can't access the help because of accessibility issues, you know, financial, you know, location, you know, all those things that are barriers. Trauma is complicated, and it can be a real asshole, honestly. But the reason I make these videos is because if there's someone out there who can't access help, maybe something I say can be of help. Maybe something I say can encourage someone to find help. You know, maybe something, just seeing me come up and listening to me talk can get someone through a bad moment. You know, I could be talking about some horrible thing that happened, but if I make someone feel less alone, then it matters. And that's why I bring it out instead of keeping it all balled up inside. I bring it out and I just lay it out. You know, it's like I'm taking my clothes off and going, look at my naked body here. And it's just, instead of a naked human being, it's all these traumas tied up in a trench coat together. And I'll just open the trench coat and let you look at it and be like, check me out. Look at me. Look at all this trauma here. You know, I got it too. I'm dealing with it. And I want you to be able to as well. And if listening to me helps you do that, that makes all of these videos worth it. Because there are things that I don't want to talk about, but I do anyway because I feel like it can help somebody. So you don't need to be ashamed of your trauma because it's not your shame. You know, if your trauma comes from abuse, that shame belongs to your abuser, not you. And it's not your fault. You never deserved it. Nobody deserves that. So don't shame yourself when you get triggered. Just tell yourself, okay, it's a hard time, but we'll get through it. And then when you do get through that moment, whatever you do, as long as you don't hurt yourself, don't hurt yourself. Like if you resist picking up a drug or an alcohol, and instead you put on a movie, or you take a walk, or you write in your journal, or you create a craft, you make art, you sing, you listen to music, you do something besides whatever was harming you before, you win. And when you do that, you pat yourself on the back and say good job, because you deserve to say good job. And then treat yourself to something. Watch another movie that you really like. Watch something funny. But treat yourself because you deserve it. But you don't need to be ashamed of your trauma or of having trauma responses, because those are not choices. Be kind to yourself. Love you.